The Valorian stood 3 feet tall, her pale blue skin almost luminous under the harsh fluorescent lights of the forward operating base. She clutched a datapad to her chest like a shield, and when Colonel Marcus Webb walked into the briefing room, she flinched. "This is your new translator," Captain Torres said, not bothering to hide the smirk. "Command's gift for your distinguished service at Helix 9. Webb stared at the creature. Distinguished service. That's what they called losing 47 Marines to a miscommunication with the Korath hegemony. A single mistranslated word, surrender instead of negotiate, and his entire company had walked into a massacre. "I requested a neural implant," Webb said flatly. "Request denied. Too expensive for field deployment." Torres shrugged. "Besides, the Valorians volunteered their linguistic specialists as part of the Alliance Treaty. She's yours for the duration of the campaign." The Valorian's enormous violet eyes, too large for her delicate face, tracked the conversation without reaction. Webb wondered how much she understood beyond the words themselves. "Does she have a name?" "Designation is V7742. They don't use names the way we do." Webb looked at the creature again. Her fingers were long and slender, ending in small translucent nails. A thin membrane connected her neck to her shoulders, vestigial flight tissue he'd read somewhere. The Valorians had evolved from gliding creatures on their low-gravity homeworld. "V7742, he said. "Can you understand me?" "Yes, Colonel Webb." Her voice was surprisingly deep for her size, with a musical quality that made the English words sound almost like singing. "I am fluent in Standard Terran, Korath Primary and Secondary, Hegemony Trade Pidgin, and 14 other diplomatic languages. I have been briefed on your mission parameters, and I'm prepared to serve." "Serve," Webb repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Is there a problem with my phrasing?" "No." He turned to Torres. "Where does she sleep?" "Your quarters. She's assigned to you personally, not the unit. Goes where you go, sees what you see. Security protocols. My quarters." "Relax, Colonel. They don't need much space. She can sleep in a footlocker if you want." The Valorian's expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. A slight drawing inward of her shoulders, a tension in those delicate hands. "That won't be necessary," Webb said quietly. "Dismissed, Captain." After Torres left, Webb stood in silence, studying his new asset. Burden. The Valorians had joined the Alliance against the Korath only 6 months ago, their motivation still unclear to most of humanity. Some said they were fleeing their dying star system. Others claimed they sought protection from the hegemony's expansion. A few whispered that they had their own agenda entirely. "You flinched when I walked in," Webb said finally. "Yes, why?" The Valorian, V7742, tilted her head in a gesture that seemed almost avian. "I was informed of your record, Colonel. The incident at Helix 9. The courts-martial considered you negligent in trusting automated translation systems. And you think I'll blame you if something goes wrong?" The thought occurred to me. Webb moved to the small window overlooking the base's landing. Pads. 3 assault ships were being prepped for tomorrow's insertion into Korath-controlled territory. 52 Marines depending on him to get it right this time. "I don't blame the translator," he said without turning. "I blame myself for not verifying, for being lazy, for assuming the machine understood context." He paused. "My people died because I was arrogant." Silence stretched between them. "I have studied the transcripts," V7742 said softly. "The automated system translated negotiate as surrender because the Korath language has no separate word for peaceful negotiation. All diplomatic overtures imply submission. A living translator would have known this, would have found another way to express your intentions." Webb turned. "Then why didn't Command assign living translators in the first place? Because we are expensive. Because machines are faster. Because," she hesitated, "because many humans find our presence uncomfortable. We are too different. Too small. Too quiet. Too easy to dismiss." "Yes, Webb moved to his bunk and began unpacking his kit. After a moment, he gestured to the small table and chair near the wall. "You can sleep there. I'll requisition bedding tomorrow. For tonight," he pulled a thermal blanket from his pack. "This will have to do." V7742 watched him spread the blanket over the table, creating a crude but functional sleeping platform at her scale. Her violet eyes tracked his movements with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "Colonel Webb, what? Why are you being kind to me?" He paused, one hand still on the blanket. "I'm not being kind. I'm being practical. A tired translator makes mistakes. Mistakes get people killed." He straightened. "Get some rest. We insert at 600. He climbed into his bunk and killed the lights, but sleep was a long time coming. In the darkness, he heard the soft rustle of fabric as V7742 settled onto her makeshift bed. Her breathing was shallow and rapid, like a small bird's. 3 feet tall, weighing maybe 40 pounds. And command expected her to keep up with a Marine combat unit in hostile territory. Webb closed his eyes and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. The Korath stronghold was a nightmare of organic architecture, walls that pulsed with bioluminescent veins and floors that squelched underfoot. Webb's Marines moved in combat formation, weapons trained on every shadow, while V7742 kept pace at his side with surprising stamina. "Contact ahead," Sergeant Chen whispered through the comm. "4 Korath warriors. Looks like a patrol." Webb held up a fist. The unit froze. "Can you hear what they're saying?" he asked V7742, his voice barely audible. She closed her eyes, those large violet orbs disappearing behind pale lids. Her head tilted, and Webb realized the membrane at her neck was vibrating slightly. Some kind of evolved sound amplification. "They are discussing shift rotations," she whispered, complaining about the cold. "One of them mentions unusual communications traffic. They suspect human forces are in the area but do not know our position. Can we go around? There is a service corridor 60 meters to our left. Maintenance access. It will add 20 minutes to our approach, but they should not detect us." Webb made the call. 20 minutes later, they emerged in a storage chamber just outside the facility's command center, exactly where they needed to be. "Good work," he said quietly. V7742 said nothing, but something in her posture eased slightly. The extraction went smoothly. A Korath data specialist who had been feeding intelligence to the Alliance smuggled out through a ventilation system that the Korath hadn't thought to guard because it was sized for Valorian dimensions. V7742 had spotted that weakness in the facility blueprints during their pre-mission briefing. On the transport back to base, Webb found himself watching her. She sat apart from the Marines, curled into a corner seat, her datapad clutched to her chest again. The squad had accepted her presence with the professional indifference of soldiers who'd seen too much to be surprised by anything. But they didn't include her in their post-mission banter. She was alone. Webb moved to sit beside her. "You did well today. I performed my function. You did more than that. The service corridor, that was smart. The ventilation route, that saved us 2 hours and probably a firefight." V7742's fingers tightened on her datapad. "I reviewed the available intelligence and applied logical analysis. Any competent translator would have done the same. Maybe, but you're the one who's here." Webb paused. "What does V7742 mean? The designation. It is a batch number. I am the 42nd individual from the 7th production series of Valorian Diplomatic Auxiliaries." "Production series? We are bred for this purpose, Colonel. Linguistic ability, pattern recognition, emotional regulation. Our genetic lines are cultivated to produce optimal translators and cultural liaisons." Her voice was matter-of-fact. "It is an honor to serve in this capacity." Webb felt something cold settle in his chest. "So you didn't choose this. Choice is a human concept. We are what we are made to be. That's not an answer." V7742 finally looked at him, those violet eyes unreadable. "Among my people, there are those who translate, those who calculate, those who nurture. We do not question our roles any more than you would question the color of your eyes. But you could, if you wanted to, question it. A long silence. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. There was one in my batch, V7729. She asked questions. She wanted to know why some of us were selected for human assignment, and others were not. She wanted to understand the criteria. What happened to her? She was recalibrated. Genetic adjustments to reduce curiosity without affecting linguistic function. V7742's hands were very still on her datapad. She no longer asks questions. Webb didn't know what to say. The transport's engines hummed around them, and outside the porthole, the stars were cold and distant. I'm going to call you 7, he said finally. If that's all right. V7742 blinked. 7 is not my designation. No, it's your name. The one I'm giving you. He shrugged awkwardly. Unless you'd prefer something else. For a long moment, she stared at him. Then something shifted in her expression. A softening around the eyes. A slight relaxation of that guarded posture. 7, she repeated, as if testing the sound. I do not object to this designation. Good. Webb stood. Get some rest. We have another mission in 36 hours. He walked back to his seat, feeling her eyes on his back. When he glanced over his shoulder, she had turned to look out the porthole. Her small form silhouetted against the stars. She was still holding the datapad, but her grip had loosened. It was, Webb realized, the first time he'd seen her relax. The ambush came 3 weeks later, on a routine patrol that should have been safe. Webb knew something was wrong the moment they entered the canyon. The rock formations were wrong, too regular, too deliberately placed. He opened his mouth to call a retreat, and the world exploded. Korath energy weapons lit up the canyon walls, turning the narrow passage into a kill zone. Private Morrison went down in the first volley, his chest a smoking ruin. Sergeant Chen grabbed 2 Marines and laid down covering fire while Webb dragged the survivors toward a shallow overhang. 7! He shouted. Where are they? She was already moving, her small body pressed against the rock, those violet eyes scanning the cliffs above. 14 shooters. Elevated positions. 6 on the north face, 8 on the south. They are communicating in battle cant, different from the diplomatic language. I can only understand fragments. Tell me what you can. They expect reinforcements. Someone called a prime commander is coming. They were ordered to pin us down, not to kill. They want prisoners. Prisoners. The Korath were not known for their gentle treatment of captured humans. Webb had seen the intelligence reports, the images that haunted his nightmares. How long until these reinforcements arrive? 7 closed her eyes, listening. 12 minutes, perhaps 15. Not enough time. The overhang provided cover but no escape route. They were boxed in, outnumbered, and running low on ammunition. Colonel, Chen said, his voice tight. We could try to punch through. Hit them hard. Make a break for the canyon mouth. They'd cut us down before we got halfway. Then we go out fighting. Better than whatever they've got planned for prisoners. Webb looked at his Marines. 8 survivors, 3 wounded. Young faces trying to hide their fear. They were ready to die on his order. He wasn't ready to give that order. 7, he said quietly. Is there any other way? She was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was strange, hesitant in a way he'd never heard before. There is a frequency. Emergency band. Valorian diplomatic priority. If I broadcast a surrender signal on our behalf, the Alliance doesn't surrender. Not a real surrender. A request for parley. The Korath honor such requests from Valorian diplomats. There are ancient treaties, obligations that predate human contact. They would be required to halt their attack and send a negotiator. Chen snorted. And then what? We sit down for tea while they call for more backup? No. 7's voice was very small. They would take me. As a guarantor of the negotiation. It is customary. The diplomat offers themselves as proof of good faith. Absolutely not, Webb said immediately. Colonel, it would buy time. Hours, perhaps. Enough for you to call for extraction, for reinforcements. I said no. I am not a soldier. I am an asset. A resource. My value is in what I can do. And if what I can do is save 8 human lives, you're not a resource. Webb grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. You're not an asset. You're 7. You're my... He stopped, the word catching in his throat. You're not dying for us. Not today. 7 stared at him with those enormous violet eyes. Why? Because I won't let you. Because that's not how this works. He released her, turned back to his Marines. Chen, redistribute ammunition. We're going to hold this position until I figure out another way. Sir, there is no other way. The Korath fire intensified, forcing them deeper under the overhang. A rock shard caught Webb across the cheek, drawing blood. He wiped it away and kept scanning the cliffs, looking for any weakness, any opportunity. 7 was silent beside him. Her hands trembled on her datapad. 9 minutes. Webb's mind raced through options and discarded them. A frontal assault was suicide. Calling for air support would take too long. Surrender meant torture and death. Colonel... Chen's voice was strained. Morrison's suit beacon. It's still active. If we could boost the signal, the Korath would track it too. Maybe. But it might also reach our extraction point. Let them know we're in trouble. It was a slim hope. Almost no hope at all. But almost was better than nothing. Do it, Webb ordered. Chen worked frantically with Morrison's suit, rerouting power, amplifying the distress signal. The Korath fire continued to rain down, keeping them pinned. 7 minutes. Signal's out, Chen reported. No way to know if anyone received it. 4 minutes. The Korath fire suddenly stopped. In the ringing silence, Webb heard movement on the cliff faces, warriors repositioning, preparing for the final assault. 2 minutes. They're coming, 7 whispered. Webb raised his weapon. Around him, his Marines did the same. 8 soldiers, standing in a ragged line under a rock overhang, facing impossible odds. Then he heard it. The whine of Terran engines. The thunder of atmospheric entry. A flight of assault gunships screamed over the canyon, their weapons tearing into the Korath positions with devastating precision. The cliffs erupted in fire and chaos, enemy warriors tumbling from their perches like broken dolls. Extraction incoming, the radio crackled. Hold your position, Bravo unit. Cavalry's here. Webb let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Around him, his Marines were cheering, laughing, some of them crying with relief. He looked down at 7. She was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. Something between wonder and confusion and something else, something deeper. You would have died, she said. All of you. Rather than let me, yeah. I don't understand. Webb holstered his weapon and knelt beside her, bringing himself down to her eye level. Then let me explain something, 7. When I said you weren't an asset, I meant it. You're part of this unit. You're one of us. And we don't leave our people behind. But I'm not human. So what? He reached out, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. Neither is Chen, technically. He's got more cybernetic parts than organic ones at this point. Doesn't make him any less my Marine. 7 was quiet for a long time. The gunships were landing, the roar of their engines filling the canyon. Dust swirled around them, catching the light. 7, she said finally, her voice almost too soft to hear. You gave me a name. I did. Among my people, names are sacred. They are earned through great deeds, or given by those who hold your life in their hands. She looked at him with those violet eyes, and for the first time, he saw tears there. Strange tears, pale and luminescent. You gave me a name, and then you were willing to die rather than let me sacrifice myself. I told you, you're one of us. No, Colonel. What you did was more than that. She placed her small hand over his, her fingers cool against his skin. Among the Valorians there is a word, Ekareth Sol. It does not translate directly, The closest approximation would be Soul Keeper, one who holds another's life as more precious than their own. Webb didn't know what to say. I have never had a Kareth soul before, Seven continued. I was not bred for such bonds, but I find myself... She paused, searching for words. I find myself grateful that I was assigned to you, that this is where I am. The extraction team reached them, medics rushing to the wounded, soldiers helping the survivors to the waiting gunships. In the chaos, Webb and Seven remained still, that small hand resting on his. Come on, he said finally, standing and offering his hand. Let's go home. Seven took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. They walked to the gunship together, and if the other Marines noticed the colonel helping the tiny Valorian up the boarding ramp, none of them commented. Some things didn't need words. The Korath counteroffensive came 6 weeks later when the Alliance thought they were winning. Webb was in the command center when the first reports came in. Massive enemy fleet emerging from hyperspace, planetary defenses overwhelmed, ground forces cut off from evacuation. The base went to full alert, Marines scrambling for defensive positions, officers shouting orders into chaos. Colonel Webb, a young lieutenant, appeared at his elbow. We're evacuating non-essential personnel. Your translator stays with me. Sir, the Valorian liaison has already been contacted. They're offering to take their people back. She stays with me. The lieutenant looked like he wanted to argue. He didn't. Webb's reputation had grown considerably since the canyon incident. The story had spread through the battalion like wildfire. The colonel who'd refused to sacrifice his translator. The Valorian who'd earned a name. Seven was waiting for him at his quarters, already suited up in the light tactical gear he'd requisitioned for her weeks ago. She looked absurd in it, a 3-foot alien in human military equipment scaled down to fit, but she also looked ready. The Valorian ship is departing in 20 minutes, she said as he entered. They are offering transport to all Valorian personnel. Are you going? Are you asking me to go? Webb paused in the middle of strapping on his combat harness. I'm asking what you want. Seven was quiet for a moment. I want to stay. With you. With the unit. She hesitated. But I understand if my presence is a liability. I am not a soldier. In a real battle, you've already proven yourself. Webb finished with his harness and grabbed his rifle. You save more lives with your ears and your brain than most Marines save with their guns. That is not the same as fighting. No, it's better. He moved to the door, then stopped. Seven. If you want to go, I won't stop you. This is going to be bad. Maybe worse than bad. The Valorians will take you somewhere safe. Will you be going somewhere safe? No. Then neither will I. The battle for the base lasted 18 hours. Webb lost count of the firefights, the retreats, the desperate counterattacks. His Marines fought like demons, giving ground inch by inch, buying time for the evacuation transports to escape. Seven stayed at his side through all of it, her voice a constant calm presence relaying enemy communications, warning of flanking maneuvers, guiding them through the chaos. By the 16th hour they were down to 12 Marines and running out of ammunition. The Korath had them cornered in the base's secondary command center, a defensible position, but surrounded. Chen, Webb said, his voice hoarse. How are we looking? 3 more hours until the fleet can break through for extraction, maybe 4. Chen's face was gray with exhaustion. We've got ammunition for 2. Tops. Then, we make it last. The Korath began their final assault at hour 17. They came in waves, pouring through the corridors like water, overwhelming the hastily erected barricades through sheer numbers. Webb's Marines fell back again, until they were crammed into the command center itself, backs against the wall. This is it, someone said. Webb didn't see who. He was loading his last magazine when Seven spoke. Colonel. There's another option. 7. The self-destruct system. This facility's reactor. I can access it from the auxiliary console. She pointed to a terminal on the far side of the room, on the far side of the barricade, exposed to enemy fire. The Korath are massed around this building. If I trigger the overload, you'd die. You'd live. All of you. She met his eyes. Let me do this. No, Colonel. I said no, damn it. Webb grabbed her arm. We are not having this conversation again. You are not sacrificing yourself for us. Why? Her voice cracked, and for the first time he heard real anger in it. Why do you keep refusing? I am 1. You are 12. The mathematics are simple. My life for all of yours. Because your life isn't math. Webb was shouting now, and he didn't care. Because you matter. Because He stopped, the words tangled in his throat. 7 stared at him, her violet eyes wide. Because you what? The Korath hit the barricade. The Marines opened fire. In the chaos, Webb pulled 7 against him, shielding her body with his own. Stay behind me, he ordered. Whatever happens, stay behind me. The barricade buckled. Korath warriors poured through. Webb fired until his rifle was empty, then drew his sidearm. Around him, his Marines were fighting hand to hand, the desperate close-quarters combat of soldiers who knew they were going to die. A Korath blade flashed toward Webb's chest. 7 moved. She threw herself between them, her small body taking the blow that was meant for him. The blade punched through her tactical vest, through her chest, emerging from her back in a spray of luminescent blue blood. No. Webb caught her as she fell, his sidearm forgotten. The Korath warrior raised his blade for another strike, and exploded as Chen's last grenade took him and 3 others. 7. Look at me. Her violet eyes were dimming, the light fading from them like stars going out. Blue blood bubbled at her lips when she tried to speak. Told you, she whispered. Mathematics. 1 for 12. Shut up. Just shut up. You're going to be fine. Liar. But she was almost smiling. You're a terrible liar, Marcus Webb. His first name? She'd never used his first name. Why? He asked, and his voice broke. Why did you? I never asked you to. Because you gave me a name. Her hand found his, her grip weak and cold. Because you made me more than what I was bred to be. Because, she coughed, more blue blood. Because I wanted to. Not because I was told to. Not because it was my function. Because I chose to. 7. I chose you. Karath Solane. Her eyes found his one last time. Is that not what humans call love? You're not going to die, Webb said. I'm not going to let you. The sound of Terran gunships filled the air. Extraction, finally, breaking through the Korath lines. The enemy warriors began to fall back, cut down by precision strikes from above. But Webb didn't look up, didn't watch the rescue. His eyes were on 7, his hands pressing against the wound, trying to hold her together, hold her here. Medic! He screamed. Medic! They came running. Human medics, Valorian medical specialists who'd been waiting on the extraction ships. They pried 7 from his arms, loaded her onto a stretcher, ran with her toward the waiting transport. Webb followed. He didn't remember the walk, didn't remember Chen guiding him onto the ship, didn't remember anything except the sight of 7's blood on his hands. Blue, luminescent, already fading. The transport lifted off. The medical team worked frantically, their words a blur of technical jargon. Webb sat in the corner, covered in blood, his own and hers, and watched. She was so small. Had always been so small. He'd never really thought about it before. Hours passed. The transport docked with a medical frigate. 7 was rushed to surgery. Webb was forced into a decontamination chamber. Then a medical exam. Then a series of debriefs he didn't really hear. Finally, Chen found him in the corridor outside the surgical wing. They're saying she's got a chance, the sergeant said quietly. Valorians have weird physiology. Redundant organs. The blade missed her primary heart. She has more than one heart? 3, apparently. Chen almost smiled. Guess all that worrying about keeping her safe, and she's tougher than any of us. Webb leaned back against the wall, suddenly exhausted. She took a blade for me, Chen. She jumped in front of a blade that was meant for my chest. I saw. I never asked her to do that. No? But she did it anyway. Chen was quiet for a moment. You know what the Valorians are saying? The medical team? What? That she broke protocol. Companions aren't supposed to physically intervene to protect their assigned humans. They're translators, cultural liaisons, not bodyguards. What she did was anomalous, unprecedented. They're talking about recalibrating her when she recovers. Webb was on his feet before he knew he was moving. They're not touching her. That's what I told them. Chen's eyes met his. Told them she's earned her place in this unit. Told them if they want to take her, they'll have to go through every Marine she helped save. And the Valorian liaison looked at me like I'd grown a second head. Said something about human attachment patterns being statistically improbable, and walked away. Chen shrugged. I think they're scared of us, to be honest. Scared of what we make their people become. Webb thought about Seven, standing in that command center, ready to blow herself up to save them. Thought about her saying she chose. That she wanted to. Maybe the Valorians were right to be scared. The surgical wing doors opened, and a Valorian medic emerged. She was taller than Seven, her skin a deeper shade of blue, her eyes the same striking violet. Colonel Webb? She is asking for you. Seven was awake. Barely. Her small form was nearly invisible under the medical equipment, monitors and tubes and blinking lights surrounding her like a technological cocoon. But her eyes found him the moment he entered the room. You're alive, she whispered. Thanks to you. He pulled a chair to her bedside and sat. That was stupid, you know. Reckless. You could have died. I chose to. I know. He reached out and took her hand, so small in his. I know you did. Are you angry? Furious? He paused. Terrified. Grateful. All of it. Seven's fingers tightened around his. They want to recalibrate me. The liaison said my behavior was aberrant. That I had become too attached. They can try. Marcus. His name again, soft as a prayer. What am I to you? I need to understand. Webb looked at her, this tiny, blue-skinned creature who had been assigned to him as a tool, a resource, an asset. Who had grown into something else entirely. Something he didn't have adequate words for. Your family, he said finally. That's the closest I can come. You're the person I would die for, the person I would kill for, the person who makes the universe feel a little less cold and empty. He squeezed her hand. You're my Seven. My translator. My friend. Among my people, these are not terms that apply to someone like me. Then your people are wrong. Seven was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, something shifted in her expression, a relaxation, an acceptance. I was bred to serve, she said. To translate, to be useful. I was not meant to feel. This, whatever this is. What is it? I do not know. Loyalty, perhaps. Belonging. The sense that I am exactly where I am supposed to be, with exactly the person I am supposed to be with. Her violet eyes met his. Is this what it feels like? To be human? Webb thought about all the things humanity meant. The love and the cruelty. The courage. And the cowardice. The endless capacity for both creation and destruction. It's part of it, he said. The best part, maybe. Then I think I understand. Why your species fights so hard to protect each other. Why you would rather die than leave someone behind. Seven's grip on his hand was stronger now, some of her strength returning. It is not mathematics. It is more than that. Yeah, it's more than that. Outside the medical bay, Chen was standing guard. Beyond him, in the corridor, Webb could see other members of his unit, Marines who had survived the battle, who had come to check on their Valorian translator. There's Seven. She had been assigned as his translator. He had never asked her to take that bullet, to jump in front of that blade, to save his life at the risk of her own. But she had. Because she chose to. Because in the end, that's what family did. Webb settled back in his chair, still holding Seven's hand. Rest now, he said. I'll be here when you wake up. Promise? Promise. Seven's eyes closed. Her breathing slowed, even and peaceful. The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. And Marcus Webb, colonel of the Terran Marine Corps, veteran of 100 battles, sat beside her bed and kept watch. Because that's what you did for the people you loved. Even if they were 3 feet tall, blue-skinned, and had never asked to be anything more than a translator. Even if they had become everything